Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller-Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk, an independent review of IU's response to the protests in Dunn Meadow is out, and it backs the school's actions.
Their findings really resonated as issues on our campus, and I thought their recommendations made good sense.
The firm behind the review recommends IU approve the new expressive action policy. The city of Bloomington and Monroe County are taking feedback on a transportation plan that will guide them for the next 2 decades.
We are right in between the early data collection and analysis phase.
The input will help determine how best federal transportation funding is used. And Monroe County Schools unveiled its timeline for emerging Childs and Templeton elementary schools. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Indiana University has released a review by the law firm it hired to look into its response to the pro-Gaza protest in Dunn Meadow in April. Ethan Sandwise spoke yesterday with University President Pamela Whitten and the lead attorney on that team and has the story.
State police arrested 57 pro-Gaza protesters at IU in April after IU changed an assembly policy. Those events have led to lawsuits against the university and faculty calls for the president's resignation. Whitten announced she was hiring a law firm to investigate the university's actions in June at the last meeting of the Board of Trustees.
To obtain the most objective viewpoint of the recent events in Dunn Meadow that can inform our decisions going forward, we issued an RFP and conducted a robust search for an independent firm to come conduct a review.
Cooley LLP specializes in corporate law, but its white-collar defense and investigations group led the review. The team's homepage says it conducts, quote, high-stakes investigations and defends companies and individuals in government enforcement actions. But IU and Cooley say the review was wholly independent.
What that really means is that we follow the facts where they lead us. We figure out what happened, and we do that by reviewing documents, by talking to people.
Cooley found that IU's last-minute change to Dunn Meadow's assembly policy was permitted both legally and under university policy, but it led to a lot of confusion. It says IU balanced free speech with campus safety and that sending state police was, quote, the safest option available to remove the encampment. Cooley also suggests creating a university-wide speech policy, which the trustees are already pursuing. It recommends the university make some changes,
including the fact that IU should approve a new expressive activity policy, communicate clearly any changes in policy and what those changes mean, and improve communications with critical constituencies on campus.
Despite a lawsuit against the university by the ACLU and dismissed charges against protesters by the Monroe County prosecutor, the review generally affirms IU's legal claims. Asked if she was surprised by the results, Whitten said she just received them yesterday and need more time to go over them.
Based on my first read-through, it hits the mark for me. In general, their findings really resonated as issues on our campus, and I thought their recommendations made good sense.
Whitten told WTIU she'd been thanked by parents and students for acting to keep students safe. Many students and faculty in the Meadow that day said they felt threatened by the militarized police response. When asked if any of the parents were worried the police presence made their students feel unsafe, Whitten had this to say.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's possible that something came in that I haven't seen, of course.
Authors of the 75-page report interviewed more than 24 people, including 11 specified administrators at IU, officers from the IUPD and ISP leadership, the Monroe County prosecutor, and students and faculty. Donaleski said they tried without success to interview 2 protest leaders. When asked, she didn't say specifically whether they had spoken with any protesters.
We spoke with a number of students who were there on that day, who had friends in the encampments.
IU released the report publicly on Thursday, and it's available to read on its website.
Now we're joined now by Ethan Sandwise. Ethan, when you spoke with President Whitney yesterday, did she indicate any type of second thoughts?
She didn't. She said that she didn't want to see what happened in the spring happen again in the fall, but she's stuck by her actions.
This commitment to safety really was the North Star for all of our decisions, in that season. And I stand behind the decisions that we made at that time.
Despite campus units calling for her resignation, the ACLU lawsuit, and coverage in the national media, President Whitten says she feels she was acting in the best interests of the university community. I think this report's findings are going to reinforce that belief for her.
So what else is in this report that you weren't able to touch upon in this story?
But one of the longest parts of the review is a breakdown of all the events since April 24, when the university leaders met to discuss how they would handle the encampment. What I've seen so far isn't terribly revealing, but it sheds some light still on some of those backroom processes that shaped how these things unfolded. There's also mention in there about a committee that met to create last-minute changes to the assembly policy. One member said who was interviewed said that they felt the administration had already made its decision before they gathered. That doesn't mean they did, but it does give us an idea about how these committee members saw their own role.
So the report says that IU had a call on the state police because IUPD couldn't handle that situation. So what is Cooley saying in this report on how to handle that situation?
Well, first off, they recommended creating more explicit rules for when the state police can be called. One of the things that makes these protests so chaotic was a lack of warning and clear policy by the university. Second, they recommended getting the IUPD to a larger staffing level. IU is trying to grow the department already. President Whitten told me that their budget next year will increase by $5 million. The police recently offered officers a raise to become more competitive with other Indiana agencies.
So I don't know, is this report going to have any type of change in how the community is seeing this situation?
I would be surprised if it did. You really can't underestimate the visceral effect on people in Dunn Meadow in April when they saw students being tackled and arrested by police. The fact, too, that these findings were so in line with what the administration has already said is likely to generate some skepticism. True, IU hired the Cooley law firm for what they called an independent review. Cooley also maintains it had complete independence. The fact is that's not really something we can prove or disprove with the information available right now.
All right, Ethan, thanks so much for your reporting. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Since President Joe Biden backed out of his re-election campaign, Democrats across the country have quickly lined up behind Vice President Kamala Harris. Indiana Democrats are no exception. The party pledged its delegates at next month's convention to Harris earlier this week. Ethan has more on that.
Harris spoke in Indianapolis Wednesday at the National Convention of Zeta Phi Beta, a historically black sorority. The visit came 2 days after she launched her presidential campaign, despite Indiana's reputation as a reliably red state.
These extremists want to take us back, but we are not going back. We are not going back.
Current and former Democratic office holders have endorsed Harris's campaign. Former Senator Joe Donnelly will lead Indiana's delegation to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago next month.
I have great confidence in her judgment. She has traveled the world and working with our allies. She's ready on day one to assume the responsibilities of the presidency. That's why I've endorsed her.
Monroe County Democrats followed their state-level counterparts Tuesday.
It has been an intense few days of emails and phone calls from state leadership to district leadership to county leadership. 4
locals are going as delegates: Bloomington Mayor Kerry Thompson, City Clerk Nicole Bolden, Councilperson Sidney Zulik, and IU undergraduate Emma Schreiberg. In some respects, Harris is a clear choice. Former vice presidents such as Richard Nixon, George Bush Sr., and Biden himself all went on to the White House.
Incumbency is huge in politics. If you're the current mayor, there's a really good chance you're going to be the next mayor. And if you can't be the incumbent, being the number 2 in command is the next best thing.
But unlike them, Harris never won a presidential primary. Some political commentators have criticized the party for what they characterize as an insider pick. Indiana Democrats pushed back.
It's going to be a convention of Hoosier delegates, delegates elected by the people of Indiana. not by any elites, not by any insiders, but by the people of Indiana.
We've lost track of how candidates are picked for president. We still use an electoral college system. Political parties have nominating conventions to tell the public, here's our candidate from our party, or our two-party system. And so I think what we're experiencing is a little bit of a growing pain.
Democrats, including Donnelly, praised Biden's decision to withdraw. After a poor showing in his debate with Donald Trump, polls showed him trailing the former president.
Polling organizations have asked, if you had to choose between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, who would you choose? And she does around the same as Biden, a little bit worse. So it's not a huge amount, but it's about in the same ballpark. She's not clearly ahead.
But Henry says he thinks that will change.
A pinpoint in time, a poll in time, doesn't tell me much other than it is going to be a close race. And I think as the Democrats select our nominee for vice president in the next few weeks, we'll see that open up a little bit, where people are going to look to whether or not they want to go backwards or go forward in the next 4 years.
Harris faces an uphill battle in Indiana, where a Democratic presidential candidate hasn't won the vote since 2008. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Ethan Sandweiss.
There's been a lot of misinformation about if Harris can be on the Indiana ballot since she wasn't on the primary ballot as a presidential candidate. But Indiana law says candidates on the general election ballot need only to be certified by the state party chair by September 10th to be on the ballot. Monroe County Schools interim superintendent says the district has begun the process of merging Templeton and Childs elementary schools. Marquette Winston says in the coming year, MCCSC will evaluate both school facilities, collect data and information on school mergers, and hold more than 30 engagement meetings.
Those are the three big components. At the center of this diagram, you'll see a comprehensive merger plan. At the conclusion of all of these pieces, we intend to have a written comprehensive plan as to how we will do this implementation effective for the 2025-2026 school years.
Now, Winston says the district will publish updates on information and plans to merge the two elementary schools on its website over the coming year. Monroe County School Board president says a new state law that restricts the use of wireless communication devices in schools won't have much of an impact in the district's classrooms. That's because the corporation already has a policy in place to restrict device usage. MCCSC did tweak its policy, though.
The policy was revised to include a couple of the things from that bill. So definitions of what a wireless communication device were, and instructional spaces, and what instructional time meant.
Hennessy says even though she's concerned about increased phone usage for middle school and high school students, only so much can be done to regulate how students use their devices. Students who graduate after 2029 will be able to earn seals on their transcript for enrollment, enlistment, and employment under a new proposal by the State Board of Education. The plan, which coincides with new graduation requirements, will allow students to know which courses to take for each seal or pathway. And it lets colleges, employers, and recruiters know students have the skills they need for their determined path.
If this is your dream, here's the recipe. Here's what you need to do in high school. Here's what you don't need to do in high school.
The seals are being developed by the Commission for Higher Education, Chamber of Commerce, and the Indiana National Guard. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. The Bloomington Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization is gathering input for a transportation plan. And we look into the behavior of hummingbirds and whether they're fighting or playing around your outdoor feeders. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
This is you on the cusp of your next chapter.
It's a passageway into something new.
It just seeps into you.
It's a groundbreaking moment.
We can make it ours.
We're coming out hot. We're starting here. It's definitely going to be a treat for their palate.
What a story.
She had the imagination of a genius.
Each time I go up there, it's the sense of newness.
3, 2, 1.
Showtime.
We're all running.
It's beautiful.
Cherish every moment. Continue to laugh.
We hope you'll join us.
There is no going back.
It's time for a new beginning.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Well, we're joined now by Lucas Gonzalez for more headlines from around the state. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Joe. The Bloomington and Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization is gathering public input on a 2050 metropolitan transportation plan for the area. The plan will shape the future of transportation in Bloomington, Ellettsville, and parts of Monroe County. Residents gathered this week at the Switchyard Park Pavilion to learn about the plan and share their ideas.
We're about halfway through the planning process, but we haven't actually identified any project recommendations at this point. We are right in between the early data collection and analysis phase.
The initiative is meant to identify ways to improve the area's transportation system over the next 25 years and beyond. It will evaluate aspects such as roadways, public transit, bikeways, pedestrian walkways, and freight.
I would really like to see bus lanes along 10th Street and along 3rd Street. I think those would be key to making transportation much better around the campus especially.
Nielsen adds he wants to see a multi-use path installed along Arlington Road, State Road 46, and Smith Pike. He says he bikes those roads frequently to get to his parents' house, but he often feels unsafe doing so. Grushan says the next step is coming up with project recommendations. Another public meeting will be held in the fall, and it'll allow members of the public to comment on a draft plan. Indiana University will soon have a new statewide police chief. The university announced the hiring of Anthony Williams on Monday. He's currently a lieutenant of operations at Northwest Missouri State University Police Department. This step is a significant one for Williams, who will go from directing operations at a campus with just over 10,000 students to a statewide university with more than 90,000.
Will be a challenge, but it's that's obviously why I decided to take on new things, because looking for new challenges and opportunities.
Williams begins on August 1st, the same day IU plans to implement its new expressive activity policy. He says he'll see if he can give feedback on the policy and plans to listen to his team before choosing any course of action. IU's Healthy Cities Lab has begun installing sensors around Bloomington to measure heat and prevent related health issues. Data from the 13 sensors will inform the city where to focus heat mitigation.
So we want to see that temperature distribution across the city, and that will help us know where our hot spots are and to develop cooling strategies.
Maya says these strategies include sheltering bus stops and creating cooling stations, as well as planting trees and other vegetation. She says areas without greenery can be up to 20 degrees hotter than areas with foliage. CenterPoint has proposed a settlement in its request to raise customers' rates. The Southern Indiana utility wants to recover the costs of things like replacing poles and lines, smart meters, and handling its coal ash waste. Under the settlement, the utility will get $38 million less than what it originally asked for, but the average resident would still see a $35 a month increase on their bill.
It still creates really unfair, unbalanced cost allocation that favors large industrials at the expense of residential customers and everybody else. And the community just can't afford it.
Residents with CenterPoint Energy already pay more than any other investor-owned utility in the state. And finally, Monroe County is putting $240,000 more toward cleanup efforts from the June 25th storms. The money comes from the county's share of federal COVID-19 relief dollars. The county had already approved two $50,000 emergency cleanup contracts, but officials expect cleanup costs to be closer to $500,000.
We've spent about $120,240 and moved 8,016 yards of debris.
Nibel says the county may be reimbursed for a portion of the total cleanup costs.
Columbus Mayor Mary Fadon told me that their city also sent trucks to help clean up. This is quite a storm, wasn't it?
It was. The county thinks that they still have more than 9,000 miles left of debris that they still have to pick up.
Lucas, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, this time of year is when hummingbirds in south central Indiana are most active. The birds migrate here from Central America and usually stick around through the end of summer. And if you have a feeder, you've likely seen the acrobatics the birds perform when there is more than one around. But are the hummingbirds playing or fighting? Joni Duggan has this story.
Alex Georgescu bought a hummingbird feeder last summer after moving to Bloomington.
Yeah, in 15 minutes I was just still like sitting here and hummingbirds started popping up. First was one, then multiple, and they would fight and cause all sorts of drama.
The hummingbirds zip and dart around in the air. Sometimes they'll chase each other, dive, and make loud noises to try to scare each other off.
I kind of think of them as like flying medieval knights, with a lance, but instead of a lance, they kind of use their beak.
It's the hummingbird's way of defending their territory. A hummingbird's day usually revolves around one thing: finding something to eat.
Their very high metabolic rates at that small size requires them to constantly search for food.
The birds have to eat every 10 to 15 minutes. They rely on an abundant supply of nectar, although they are no larger than 3 to 4 inches and weigh less than an ounce.
The joint structure, the bone and muscle structure around the shoulder especially, allows them to do things that a lot of other birds can't do.
They can stop in the air instantly or start hovering. With precision, they can fly up or down. Their wings flap over 50 times per second. Their long curved bills allow them to drink nectar from tubular flowers. Their favorites are red, orange, and pink ones. In a given day, a hummingbird might visit as many as 2,000 flowers.
Hummingbirds are really territorial, right? They've got that good patch of food that they're going to defend it, and so they will kind of chase each other out.
That's Ken Keffer, co-owner of Wild Birds Unlimited in Bloomington. Their other natural food sources are insects and tree sap. Keffer says feeders can help supplement the natural supply of nectar. The simple sugar-water mix is 4 parts water to 1 part sugar. Dye isn't necessary, and Keffer says it could actually make the birds sick. They're naturally attracted to the colors of feeders. The birds don't realize the feeders won't be depleted as quickly as a flower, hence some of the intense aerial battles. Keffer says the key to keeping them from fighting is to try and keep them separate.
A lot of people can keep those multiple feeders separate, maybe move one to the backyard and one to the front yard to give a little visual separation to help. But yeah, it's just the nature of hummingbirds.
From March to August, male hummingbirds are looking for a mate. They might look like they're fighting, but in these cases, the birds are pulling out all the stops to impress the females.
So when male hummingbirds are doing their territorial displays, they'll often fly 50 feet up in the air and do these big U-shaped flights, and they'll dive back and forth, to kind of help attract a mate.
Researchers who study hummingbird behavior discovered males nosedive towards females at speeds of 40 to 50 miles per hour. They'll belt out high-pitched calls, and the wind going through their tail feathers will create a whistle. You'll notice the birds always dive towards the sun. This is to make sure their feathers are in the best light. It all takes just 300 milliseconds, the time it takes to blink. Georgescu did add multiple feeders to his backyard to try to keep the peace. He says it has helped some, and there seems to be less conflict. The feeders do require a lot of upkeep. They should be cleaned, and nectar should be changed every few days to keep the birds from getting sick.
Those are kind of the important things. Keep them fresh and clean, but the hummingbirds are drawn to them.
While they may be a little extra work to take care of, Keffer says hummingbird feeders are a great way to connect with nature in your backyard.
Watching nature just for a few minutes a day can really just help get rid of stress. We feel this when we go outside, right? You just feel better, you're happier, you're kind of less stressed, you're calm, your heart rate goes down.
Studies show bird watching can reduce stress more than other outdoor activities, such as walks. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Joni Dugan.
Hummingbird season lasts through October, when most will migrate south over the Gulf of Mexico. First-year Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti scoffs at the notion of the Hoosiers being picked to finish 17th in the now 18-team Big Ten this year. Cignetti spoke at the Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis Thursday. He cited his history of turning programs around quickly and the Hoosiers being active in the transfer portal as reasons for his optimism heading into the season.
We got 22 new guys on our team, multiple all-conference players, 2 3-year starters, high-character guys. We've completely flipped the roster.
Now, Cignetti says the university's push to improve name, image, and likeness funding since the change in head coaches has been instrumental.
You know, I think the university's anteed up. You know, it's very important to them that we get football going. And there shouldn't be any, you know, limitations on what we can accomplish in football.
Indiana opens its first season under Cignetti on August 31st at home against Florida International University. Well, that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnerships with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville Fiber Internet Security Solutions and Voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson Attorneys at Law, utilizing 75 years of experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.